We have a couple people out sick today, so we'll get them caught up for next week for sure. Um, I wanted to thank you for your very insightful exit tickets after last week, especially in regard to Sarah Loken's presentation about homelessness. It was very clear that that touched people quite deeply, and it really helped think about things from some different perspectives. And uh, in following up on that, of course, it's an example of the value of the community resource person, but I hope that you also take away from that experience how important the reflection was afterwards. And so, as you're building your projects and thinking about the experiences that you give kids in order to develop a deeper understanding of a topic, it's also important to not just build that knowledge base, but to constantly be reflecting on what kids are taking away from those learning experiences, because it would be, especially with a complicated topic like homelessness, you can imagine that without reflection, we really don't know what the individual perceptions and learnings are. So that can be really rich, and it's really important. So thank you for what you all shared. That was valuable to us. Do you have any other questions or comments coming from last week that you want to make? All good? All right, so we are working up to our culminating session next week, which does not mean that you have to pressure yourselves about having your template completely filled in and ready to submit. What we are aiming for next week, as you know, are a set of a couple of slides reflecting the talking points for each project. And really, the purpose of your sharing is going to be to help us understand why you're excited about the topic and how you see the project getting started. So please don't experience any worry or anxiety that you're not as far as you should be with your complete plan. People move at different speeds depending on your thought process and the time you have available. So you've got time to turn those in order to complete all the hours that you want for credit and to finish the process in a way that's comfortable for you. So for next week, it's really just the slides with those talking points. And I know we had a class member too that asked me to take a look at the first draft of that to make sure that things looked on target. And if any of you that want me to do that this week, I certainly will, but that's not a requirement. But we look forward to seeing how all these plans come together and getting feedback from the group on each project. That really will be exciting for us. We want to, toward that end, give you about a half hour, a little bit later, where you can talk to each other uninterfered with by us, and get whatever feedback you would like from one another in getting ready. And we'll be available here so that you can check back into the main room if you have questions for us, but it'll just give you all a chance to talk informally about how things are coming along. First, we have a video that I think is going to be really, really valuable for you. This just became available for us.
I can't get to it if I don't do this.
Okay. All right. I attended a webinar last week that was sponsored by Edutopia, and they were releasing the results of a very comprehensive research study about the value of project-based learning. And for this study, there were control groups and experimental groups. So the kids in the treatment group received a very innovative approach on 4 topics that were part of the curriculum. And then the kids in the control group maintained their traditional approach. And the results, as you will find, are quite interesting and affirming. And so one of the things that's really comforting about this is that when we get nervous that if we go in a different direction and feel like we're taking a risk, that we're going to endanger test scores or other measurements that are critical in some way, or at least viewed as critical by some other folks. This will set your mind at rest. I want to clarify that in order to make this research study as strict as it needed to be for the results to be valid, the teachers were handed the curriculum for those 4 projects that they did across the year. And we are in no way saying to you that you should use a prescribed set of projects or that you need to script your projects from the beginning, because we know that you'll want them to emerge with the energy and originality of the kids in large part. So please don't misinterpret that part. That said, they are really good projects, really interesting. 3 of the 4 of them are service learning. They are intended for the benefit of somebody else. The 4th one, the very first one that they did, is more of an inquiry project, which I think was called "Why Are There So Many Squirrels and So Few Dinosaurs?" So they were investigating some science concepts along those lines. But the other 3 projects have an outcome that is of benefit, not just to the learners, but to somebody else as well. So we want you to spend these 5 minutes just kind of tuning into what they found out, and we'll talk about it when we're done.
I think too, as you watch it, and each of you talked about how much time it was taking for management in the classroom and getting back. We want you to watch the kids in this, and whether you think that management is as much of an issue while they're engaged in these activities.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some fossils to actually look at, real fossils, and you can use the evidence to support what you're going to tell me about the fossils. All right? Some of the things I want
Our goal was to design, develop, and test materials. The SEEP does project-based learning, really promote student learning.
All right.
Kids, unfortunately, are introduced to science like it's a body of knowledge.
Use your evidence to support your idea.
But science is so much more than that. Science is all about trying to figure out how things work. In many respects, project-based learning mirrors what scientists do, right? Trying to answer a really important question or to figure out what's going on with some phenomena.
When I let go, I started to go slower and slower, so then it stopped.
Multiple literacies and project-based learning is very different from traditional science classrooms. I was a science teacher for about 30 years in Detroit Public Schools. We did cookbook experiments that usually were just validating whatever we talked about in class. When you go into a multiple literacies and project-based learning science class, you see something very different. You see kids that are engaged in asking questions and trying to solve problems. We developed 4 units for the 3rd grade that cover a full year of curriculum that are integrated with mathematics and English language arts. They are really investigating things. They are really making observations, asking questions. They're developing models. They're arguing with each other about the science.
We integrated literacy where it was really important to support children in the learning of science.
So we saw just in the classroom kids getting excited about reading because they were excited about the topic, because it was something that was related to what they were trying to figure out. The standards in math that we chose to integrate were the ones that were so much a part of what we do in science. They're actually measuring for a purpose in order to gather data. So that they can really analyze that data in order to figure something out.
Can you see that work?
You can't see like a paradigm passing.
My role in this was to help with the design of the research. Part of the group would get the project-based learning, and the other group would study science just as they traditionally do. We had to make sure that our sample was balanced with respect to their achievement, their population characteristics, and school enrollment size. We looked at 46 schools, 23 in the treatment and 23 in the control group. At the end of the year, we gave all the students an objective science test that was developed by the Michigan Department of Education. We found that, in fact, there was a significant treatment effect for the students that were in the treatment group. This was true regardless of what your gender was. It was true regardless of what your race and ethnicity was. And it was true whether you were a struggling reader, an average reader, or a very good reader.
We actually moved them up in their proficiencies in learning science. And so that is really strong evidence for using project-based learning in schools, because it is different. But do the kids get excited about learning science? Do they put effort into learning science? And so we also measured kids' social emotional learning.
So for teachers who are just starting out, just changing your instruction to say, we're trying to answer this question today, so that it gives purpose to what the kids are learning. That power of, I can figure things out for myself, is such an important skill for kids to develop that they will be using for the rest of their lives.
Did it make a difference when I changed the straw?
Uh, so what struck you as you watched the teachers and the kids?
And with so few of us, why don't you unmute yourself and so we can hear from all of you.
I don't think I'm quite answering your question, but one thing that struck me, I was just totally impressed with the amount, like in the control groups, like how many schools, how many kids they were talking about. Like a lot of times you'll see studies that are, that might be like this, and they're very anecdotal, very like one school, one situation type of thing. But to do a full out study with a control group and have that many schools and kids and stuff involved, well done. Really appreciate it. Like it'd be a great paper to read.
Speaking of which, this video is one of 4 because there were 4 research studies commissioned. So this is the elementary science one. There are 3 others, one of which actually is AP environmental science, with the control group sticking with the traditional AP curriculum and the other delivering the AP standards through project-based learning. And the results are comparably amazing in all 4 studies, but we're going to put in your Google Classroom. It'll be a copy of an email that I got after attending the webinar, and it has a set of links in it. So there are links to all 4 research briefs. There's a link to the video, some individual videos recommended by Edutopia, but there's also a link to the whole webinar, which I really recommend. But even if all you want to see are the videos, like the one you just saw, they are at the end of the hour. So you can go, you can scan through the recording of the webinar till you get to the videos and just watch those if that's what's of greatest interest. But it was terrific. It really was. And
I'm interested in, after watching that, what implications for your own classroom that you see, where there are lessons learned in this that apply to what you do in your classroom. But if you think of yourself also not as a classroom teacher, but you could design program, what are some of the implications of this if you were running your building, if you were running your district?
That was a very big question, my deep friend.
Because I keep going back to, I mean, our area was always in program development. So
Yeah.
I think we kind of come at it at, we love working with one teacher at a time and helping to support instructional practice. But as Ken Robinson said, you are your students' their educational experience, and you get a few more of you, and it's a movement. And if we get everybody, it's a revolution. And I know it's late in the day to think about a revolution, but we should always be looking at what pieces need to be put in place. You guys, Arlington did great work last year when the TLT and the BLT did the best days and the activity and the kid figures and coming up with a shared vision. And, how can we think about moving that forward, knowing that the kids in the video were not 3 feet apart. I understand that. And these are strange times, but there's lessons to be learned from that video. As you said, we always have great anecdotal information, but that was a great study that, we're not necessarily involved in doing, but there are things to learn from that I hope will impact practice. Any thoughts that you have on that?
I mean, I guess one thing that stood out to me was the importance of the integration of the science with the literacy. So you don't have to teach everything in its solidarity, but you can combine and you can integrate.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when we saw the tiny homes project, you all made the same observation about that the teacher was teaching math and literacy and social studies and public speaking skills all in one experience.
Sort of like what the real world, how it operates.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
No, I always have a ton of stuff to say, so I'll let Debbie go first.
Well, I was thinking when the pandemic hit and we were on lockdown, one of the things we were kind of forced to do or intentionally thought about was how can they learn some of these things at home?
Mm-hmm.
And they had access to materials that we don't always have at school.
Sure.
But, I tried to think about sorry, my lights just went off. Let me move a minute.
Yeah.
There we go. How can, and now I lost my train of thought.
How can we use what they have at home? How can
Yes, but then how can we provide them those opportunities to explore, do hands-on activities to help build that knowledge base? So, I remember, they were out digging in the dirt and they were finding what insects were out there. And we were hoping that it was such an avenue for them to kind of dive into those topics. Yet at the same time, sometimes we didn't get the participation that we thought we would.
Sure.
But I do think that hands-on piece is so key to their learning too.
Absolutely.
And when you think about program development, if I was the person in charge of the budget and I had teachers teaching a certain way that needed different types of materials, I'm not saying there's an unlimited budget, but we already spend money on stuff, lots of stuff. Used to spend a lot of money on textbooks that we don't do anymore, or at least not as often. And so even piloting, how would you look at budgets in a different way to support this kind of learning? And kids can dig for bugs at school if it's thought of that the outside is also a learning space for kids. Anything else?
That's what I was thinking of, how
your learning is not just in the classroom, but you can take it anywhere, like what Jody was saying,
Mhm.
back at home in your own home space and outside. And even now, like our new buildings, the design is a lot different with the garage doors in between our rooms, and also like our library is set up different than the traditional way we had when we were growing up too. So
When we were working with, are you anxious to go to the?
Soon.
Okay, all right. Just a couple things quickly. When we were working with Richmond schools and they had years of PD to get ready for the new building, pre-K through 12 building, and they had garage doors. And the first year, they started to co-teach a little bit, and each year saw that become more and more the norm, that the garage door opened, two classes of kids were together with two teachers and working together. And they learned to change time and space and in from away from how we had traditionally, and the gains from that were amazing. And I don't think we observed it or maybe anticipated, just with that change, what it would mean for teachers to be able to collaborate with one another and build on each other's strengths. And one last point that goes along with what you were saying and what was in the video. We're working with a group in Talmadge on the same course right now, and we have a high school math teacher in the group, and she has struggled some to think about how she could teach this way with math. And she was focusing on her statistics class, and she said, well, I probably could do that. And she was kind of still not certain how she would do it. And we said, well, could you co-teach with somebody else that the statistics would really enhance what it was that they were teaching? She said, well, I bet I could teach with a psychology teacher. And that we could, and when she made that connection, it changed everything for her. And within 2 seconds, she had texted the psychology teacher and said, do you want to do this next year? Who jumped on it. Now, 2 or 3 years ago, Talmadge High School staff would not have thought that was possible to do. And so those are making some program changes. Hopefully it'll be a positive thing. It certainly was, open things up to her. And then this last time we met, she said, I teach calculus, and it's just like the one gentleman said in the video, that kids are just learning the content, that we're giving them and not applying it. And she said, it makes no sense that we teach calculus separately from physics. And so they're going to look towards, and it was just what you were saying about, we teach everything in isolation. And when we start to open up about how we can make those connections for kids, and even in her statistics class, she started to do a few things that were more hands-on, more authentic. And she said that the engagement of the kids, it was like they would learn it for the test, but they couldn't apply it. And now she's seeing them, because she's giving them questions and problems to solve instead of just giving them the content. It's changed their behavior and their engagement and her enjoyment entirely. So I will be quiet now.
You don't need to be quiet. Here's what I'm going to really encourage you all to reflect upon, because everybody was struck by something in that video. And for us, it is permission to dream and to take chances, because they're going to pay off. I mean, what the message of that research is really has to do with you're not going to go astray here. You're going to give the kids richer experiences in different ways, and in the end, the measurement will take care of itself pretty well. but think about what it was that resonated in that video for you personally. And if you think you want to take another look at it, it's in your Google Classroom. But this is one that has, there's enough meat in that you may want to view it again. And if you're interested, explore some of the others for sure, because this is going to prove to be research that gets referred to a lot. This was a big deal. They've been waiting a long time for a large scale national study of project-based learning in comparison to traditional, and the results were so encouraging. Comments, questions?
Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you. My apologies for the tardiness.
No, that's fine.
Quite all right. All right, now we're going to release you to a breakout room, and need to know, we could do it a 3 and a 2, or all 5 of you could be together and bounce ideas off. The folks in Talmadge yesterday chose to go in 2 groups of 5. So if that doesn't feel like too much input for you, we can go that way. But if there's one person in particular in the room that you were hoping to exchange ideas with, you just need to give us feedback on how you'd like the grouping to go, and then we'll give you some instructions. Thoughts? You poor guys are so tired today. We understand. We understand.
I would guess probably more brains are better than fewer brains based on the week I'm guessing we've all experienced.
Okay.
So I
So
think I would vote for 5 unless anyone is totally opposed.
does anybody not like Catherine well enough to be? Right. Yeah, right. Yeah, sure thing. All right. Before you get to the room, like while you're in that moment of cyber transit here, I want you to think about what's a piece of your project plan that you would really like to get some feedback from your peers about. So like some of you might think, I'm not sure I've come up with good enough reflection ideas yet, or I'd like to have another entry event in my hip pocket, or I've already connected it to 2 of my elementary subject areas, but I'm wondering if anybody's got suggestions for connecting it to yet another. Or do y'all know of any good videos or children's literature on this topic? I mean, there are no right or wrong answers. But what I'm going to ask you when you return is, did you get something specific from the group in terms of resources or feedback? You know, so, but you can only get what you ask for, guys. So have some idea of what you would like to get from your colleagues, and I promise you'll get that and more if you start the discussion in that way. All right, now when I gave those instructions, at least one of you hopefully had something come to mind. So give me a thumbs up if you know what you could ask for. Okay, so Michelle, will you start then? Okay.
Sure.
And there should be enough time for each of you to sort of be the center of attention for 5 or 6 minutes. So we will put you in the room for a half an hour. We're going to stay here, but we'll mute ourselves so our noise won't get in your way, but you will be able to reappear if you need to. And otherwise, we'll send a warning in a half hour that it's time to come home. All right? All right.
Submit it for credit, but then we go back and actually do the project, and there are things that we want to tweak or change or that we need feedback from you on. And I said, my recommendation is go ahead and turn it in when you think it's ready and when you want the credit. And if there's not enough there, that the 2 of you would help people finish if they needed that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. But at the same time, that's a wonderful question about, you know, when you turn it in, you're really taking your best guess at the plan, and you're learning the process of using all the steps in the model, and that's a learning experience for you. When it's actually happening with the kids, if you make adjustments and you want to, in the end, give us a revised version that reflects the reality, as you discover other resources or as you change strategies here and there. We'd love to have it, we can always substitute the real thing for the guest thing.
Yeah.
But at this point, take it as a learning experience and just take your best shot. That's fine. Kathy made the point a few minutes ago that sometimes when kids develop a video as an authentic product, it also will show you that it's a reflection of what they've been feeling. And it's a demonstration of academic learning as well. So you'll like this as an illustration of that. We have been working with a couple of colleagues in Pickerington who teach a group of high school kids in a service learning class. And as part of their work, their ongoing service learning commitment is tutoring elementary students, and to accompany their work with the elementary kids, they learn some new things about child development and the psychology of learning and so forth. And so they're becoming experts about child development so that they can work with the kids. But these teachers have also worked with them to explore a couple of topics that they feel are important for their own age group to understand more deeply and to be able to get involved in. And so they are doing very in-depth studies in mental health and also in racial equity and reduction of bias. And they're doing some just wonderful work. Well, at the end of the mental health study, the teachers encourage the kids to team up in pairs and produce public service announcements for Nationwide Children's Hospital's mental health pavilion, because they had been working with them during the project as they were learning. And we're going to share with you one of the very quick PSAs that two girls developed for Nationwide. Now, part of what is so intentional about this was the selection of music. And I don't know if you all are familiar with the Broadway play, Dear Evan Hansen, but it is something every teacher should see if you have not. And the music is just marvelous. It was actually composed by two guys from the University of Michigan, but that's not why I bring it up. But it is about mental health issues at the high school level and peer relationships and so forth. The song that they used for the background of this PSA is one of the main songs from Dear Evan Hansen. So we'll share it with you. It's just a piece of student work that is an authentic product from service learning.
And just one thing, they do have this service learning class. They do not think that you should only have a service learning class. So this is in addition to as other teachers and use it as an instructional strategy.
I watched it this afternoon. Keep an eye out for the acronym for HOPE. I thought that was great. I hadn't seen that before.
Have you ever felt like nobody was there? Have you ever felt forgotten in the middle of nowhere? Have you ever felt like you could disappear? Like you could fall and no one would hear? Well, let that lonely feeling wash away. Maybe there's a reason to believe you'll be okay. 'Cause when you don't feel strong enough to stand, you can reach out your hand. And oh, someone will come running, and I know they'll take you home. Even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, when you're broken on the ground, you will be found.
Just a short piece, but yeah, you can imagine, I think it would resonate with their peers. What do you think? Yeah. One of the things that was conveyed in the graphics, if you didn't catch it, was the phrase, "You are enough." We work with teachers all the time, and it is easy, especially when you're tired and you are switching gears a million times, to think you're not enough. But let's sign off believing and affirming you're doing good stuff. And we can't wait to see what you present for one another and for us next week. The presentations are very informal. Yes, you'll have these slides, but you're not giving a formal speech. You're having a conversation with some friends about something that you're excited about trying with kids. That's going to be the feeling. Okay. If you need anything between now and next week that we can help with, let us know. Otherwise, we will see you then. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Thank
you
you.
too.
Bye.
Bye.